The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So the Mystics got a couple of new players last night. The Capitals put themselves in position to make the playoffs if they can beat the Flyers on the road tonight. There's another addition to the front office by the Commanders. And we got great weather. What's not to like? Mike Callow sits in for Tony today at 11 o'clock. But in the meantime, got a lot of different things to talk about, including with Mike Wilbon discussing kind of the end of Tiger Woods. Mike and I are the same age, and we relate in many ways to the athletes that we saw growing up, like Muhammad Ali and Johnny Unitas, you name it. We go back to the 1960s, and I think he has a really good way of expressing how he looks at Tiger Woods now, and we'll get to that later in the show. A little inside baseball. Every morning, probably at 6:30, 6:45, I put out a tweet just to let people know what's coming up on the show, if they got time later in the morning to listen in and what might be coming up. It's, just a way of staying in the consciousness, and I put it out on Twitter, and I did this morning. It says, on today, 9 to 11, ESPN 630 DC. Capitals win. If they win tonight, they get in. Plus, the Commanders beef up the front office, and 95 years ago today, the birth of the uniform number, which we will get to later in the show. And I got this reply from a site that calls itself Nats We're World Champions in 2019. And it says G, it's got an H in it. I don't know if G is an actual word, so I guess there's no wrong way to spell G. I've never used an H, but this one does. G-H-E-E. The Nationals beat the Dodgers in L.A. on Jackie Robinson Day with a pitcher making his majors debut, and you nothing. And he capitalized you nothing. It didn't mean when I put out the tweet that I wouldn't get to this. Should I have included it in the tweet? Yeah, probably. Okay. But you knew what happened. By 9 o'clock in the morning, most people who care know what happened. And if I talk about it, that's up to me. And it's up to you if you're interested in listening to it. And I did want to talk about that because it really is something. And I really hadn't even thought of it this way. But 2010, when Steven Strasburg made his much ballyhooed major league debut and outran the hype by striking out 14 Pittsburgh Pirates, including the last 7 he faced, that was the last time before last night that a Nats pitcher made his major league debut and got the win. That's pretty incredible. I mean, when you think of all that happened with Strasburg between 2010, which we're now going back 14 years ago in June, and now where you had him up and down, Tommy John, great, on the shelf, not so good, called by Tony the Orchid because if conditions weren't perfect, he wasn't always okay with it, but some monster performances over the years, none bigger than what turned out to be really his swan song in being the World Series MVP when the Nats won in 2019. And all that happened in between the start he made in 2010 and last night when Mitchell Parker, who was only called up to the major leagues because Josiah Gray is on the shelf and who knows how long he's going to be out. But Parker comes up from the minor leagues. There's no real, fanfare for this or anything. Steps into the toughest of positions. He's at Dodger Stadium on Jackie Robinson Day. I mean, is there a more perfect storm than that? Jackie Robinson, who played for the Dodgers, everybody in Major League Baseball is wearing number 42 as a tribute. They have 42,677 people at Dodger Stadium. Don't know if that's capacity, but that's more than capacity at Nats Park. And here's a kid who has never thrown a pitch in the major leagues making his debut. And frankly, he wasn't exactly lighting it up in the minors. He was a fifth-round draft pick in 2020. He turns 25 in September. His career minor league record is 19-23 with a 4.15 ERA. I mean, that's nothing to throw a parade about. certainly nothing to get hyped up about the way we did for Steven Strasburg. But he came through last night. In his Major League debut, he became the first Nationals pitcher to win since Steven Strasburg did it in 2010. He started the game by striking out Mookie Betts, the 2018 MVP. Then he struck out two-time AL MVP Shohei Ohtani, and then got 2020 NL MVP Freddie Freeman to ground out. That's a pretty good start. He went 5 innings. He gave up 4 hits and only 2 runs, walked away with the victory as the Nats won 6-4. They also got a 3-run homer from Luis Garcia, which was his first of the season. And not that the Nats are necessarily going to go anywhere this year, but if they found a starting pitcher, and we're a long way from saying they found one, because we've seen, debut can go great, doesn't mean it's going to continue after that. But so far, so good on Mitchell Parker, who after the game talked to Masson's Dan Kolko about his debut.
You were the first national starter to win his Major League debut since Steven Strasburg back in 2010. It happened in Los Angeles on Jackie Robinson Day against a loaded Dodgers lineup. How do you process what happened to you tonight?
I'll be honest, I'm still working on processing it. I'm taking it moment by moment. I'm just trying to enjoy all of it.
Your first inning as a big league pitcher, Mitchell, saw you face 3 Dodgers hitters who might one day end up in the Hall of Fame, in Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, in Freddie Freeman. What was going on inside of you as you walked out to the mound at Dodger Stadium and as you were going through that inning?
I've been saying it since I got here with the team that I'm just trying to not overthink it. I'm trying to just go out there and do my job, not trying to put too much pressure on myself. There's a lot out there, so just taking it one pitch at a time.
It seemed like when you really needed a strike tonight, Mitchell, you leaned on your curveball. Is that always a go-to weapon for you, or did it just kind of become that tonight?
It's definitely been when the fastball, when I'm not able to locate that, we definitely go to the curveball, and it helps to get everything back in the strike zone.
What was the best advice you got from somebody going into this start tonight, and who did it come from?
Oh, the best advice, take it all in, enjoy all of it. You only get one debut, so that came from a bunch of different guys on the team.
We had some great shots of your mom out there in the stands at Dodger Stadium watching you and kind of freaking out throughout various moments of your outing. What does it mean to have her and I'm sure other family and friends there to watch what was such a special night for you?
It's awesome. I'm glad that they were able to get here and that everything worked out and that we had a good day. So it just means it's perfect.
Mitchell, last question for you. When you reflect back on this start, months, years from now, what moments do you think are going to stay with you? What are the moments that'll live in your mind?
Honestly, the first step up the stairs, heading out for that first inning, that'll be there for a long time.
That's Mitchell Parker, who got his first appearance in the major leagues on Jackie Robinson Day in Los Angeles against the Dodgers team that is expected to win the World Series and took down 3 Hall of Famers in the first inning. He's a left-hander. They hope he sticks for a while. And as Davey Martinez said after the game, the kid's got good stuff. He's got a very low heartbeat. Nothing seems to faze him. That's a tough team to face, and he did really, really well. So nice job out of Mitchell Parker in his Major League debut. Tonight, it's back to reality as Patrick Corbin drags his 0-2 record and 8.44 ERA to the mound. But a nice start to a career for Mitchell Parker. And if things go south from here, well, he'll always have last night, right? Last night, good for the Caps as well, as the Caps beat the Bruins 2-0. And you talk about must-wins. Yeah, that was a must-win. And now we've got the final game of the season. And you wonder about playing every game of the regular season. This is why you play every game of the regular season, because it comes down to this. And it's pretty simple, although there could be some complications if they lose this game in overtime. There'd be a shred of hope of making the playoffs, but they'd have to wait until tomorrow night to find out about that. But with the win last night over the Bruins, 2-0, it's the Caps, the Flyers, the Red Wings, and the Penguins all fighting for that 8th and final playoff spot. The Islanders have clinched the division, so they're in, and now it's only a question of whether or not they can make it in as the last wild card team. The Red Wings play tonight. The Penguins face the Islanders on Wednesday, so that's a game that the Islanders don't have to win, and the Penguins would. So you don't want to leave it to that. You want to find a way to win in regulation tonight. And the reason is they hold the tiebreaker over the Red Wings and the Flyers and the Penguins. Flyers and Penguins, I should say, 1 point back. So they're in the driver's seat, and it's just a simple thing. You beat the Flyers tonight in Philadelphia, you are in the playoffs. Spencer Carberry, in his first year as Caps coach, knows what's at stake here.
I think it's pretty fitting for what this group has been through that it would come down to the last game, going on the road, playing a back-to-back against a real good hockey team to play one game for our playoff lives, and for us to get to this point, and we had to look after tonight. And I thought our guys did a really good job of staying focused on just tonight, worry about Boston, and it was as clean a game as we've had. I felt like we were looking for that second. You get a little bit worried there, right, when you don't find that second on a lot of those chances in the second period, and then it stays at one. So you figure that, but I thought we did a real nice job in the third period, even when we went down a few forwards and had to mix some things up, short bench, manage that game real well.
Spencer, obviously, these are stressful situations, stressful games, but as a coach, how rewarding is it to see your guys respond time and time again, and just how much fun is this down the stretch here?
It's been the character of the group since October, of just finding ways to win in all different ways, and you could go back through the 81, even early in the year, even when we were trying to find our footing, and then we got some wins. Like, I even think of our first win here against Calgary when, like, we were under siege. They must have had 45 shots, and just we found a way to grind that out, win in a shootout. And so there's so many different moments where this team has shown its true character throughout this year of finding different ways to win. And as well, when our backs were against the wall and our season was on the brink in multiple situations, post-deadline, we moved some guys out. Easy for our group to say, you know what, it's been a great run. We're not going for it this year, so we'll just ride off into the sunset. And it wasn't even close to that. Our guys are like, we're going to find a way, and we'll just focus on the next game and the next game. And so they deserve a ton of credit, and we're staying in this fight. We got one more to go.
Yep, and that's tonight. If they win in Philadelphia, Caps will be in the playoffs, which seemed highly unlikely at the trade deadline, and then when they went through a really bad stretch of games where, it looked like, forget it, it's over. They just can't score goals. They're still not scoring a whole lot of goals. Only 2 of them last night, but you had Charlie Lindgren standing on his head, in his own building, and making 16 saves with the defense playing very well around him, not creating too many shot opportunities. And so tonight, if they win, that's a hell of an accomplishment. It really is. And all credit to Spencer Carberry for keeping his team in it when at the trade deadline you trade away a 20-game scorer in Mantha, and looks like, you're working for next year. And next year, we'll have to wait until next year if they win tonight and make it into the playoffs. The Commanders, it's, every move they're making seems to be good. We won't really know until they start playing on the field. Only 4 wins last year, not enough. But the moves that they make, you got to say, looks pretty good to me. I mean, they've had people in and out of there before. Good hires where you think, okay, they've turned the corner. Like Brian Lafemina comes in from the league and says, yeah, we're going to do away with, didn't word it this way, but it was pretty clear, we're going to stop lying about selling out the stadium. We got tickets to sell, and we got to get people more engaged in this football team. He lasted 8 months. He was out the door. I don't know if they really wanted him in the first place. He may have been pushed on them by the league. Now the Commanders have hired Dave Gardy as Senior Vice President of Football Initiatives. I don't know exactly what that means, but the story in the Post says his responsibilities with Washington are expected to range from in-game management to compliance with league protocols, officiating trends, and safety guidelines. Again, I don't know what all that means. It just means that they're spending money on looking at things that will help them win games, okay? I think that's the way you look at it. Working for the NFL, he played a role in developing competitive balance and integrity policies and procedures and helped oversee rules of administration on game days. I wonder, the way it's worded, I wonder if he'll be actually up in the booth helping with challenges and things like that. But it's just another smart person entering the organization, which can't be a bad thing. And then we have this from Axios this morning. Josh Harris is adding an experienced political player to his D.C. team, giving him a tough assignment, find a new home for his storied franchise. Hiring Curtin Mehta, a top Senate aide, doesn't mean that Harris has decided to bring the Commanders back to RFK, but he's the kind of hire a new NFL owner would make to navigate the politics of moving a team from the Maryland suburbs to a parcel of land that's currently owned by the federal government. So, okay, doesn't mean they're going to wind up in the district, but that's a step towards doing that. And what we'd heard about Josh Harris and what we seem to have watched Josh Harris do in less than a year as an owner, what is it? It's only 9 months, right? It's he didn't take over until July, so we're 3 months from the 1 year anniversary of that, and we have seen him hire good people, and that's what we heard about a man who's he's spread pretty thin. He owns the Devils, he owns the 76ers, he's got an investment company. He's stretched thin, so he relies on hiring good people and letting them do their jobs, and that's what it looks like is continuing here with these recent hires. And are they going to wind up in the district for sure? Who knows? But don't you hire somebody who can help you navigate the politics of that? Yeah, I think that's something you do. If you've had an organization that's been in complete chaos for a long time, don't you hire somebody who's been with the league and has worked with compliance, which is something that hasn't often happened here? So you gotta give them an applause. Now if they go through a 4 or 5 win season next year, you get kind of restless. But the moves that continue to be made are showing you that they are spending money in the right places. They didn't go nuts in free agency. They brought in a lot of players, most of whom won't be here when they get really good, but they're building an organization. And this is all new to people who have observed this team for the last 25 years with the impetuous nature of the owner, going for it, sometimes making big-name hires, overspending for free agents. All that's done. Seems like they got people who know how to run a business and make it make sense. That's so refreshing. Coming up, looks like Shohei Ohtani is off the hook. The numbers that you heard about the gambling debts run up by his interpreter, where supposedly 25 bets a day were averaged over a 2-year period, and more than $180 million went out the door, and only $140 million came back, and he stole 16. All that stuff looks like it hasn't touched Ohtani. And to give you the wrap-up on it and the big picture, Jeff Passan, who covers Major League Baseball for ESPN, was on the Rich Eisen Show yesterday. He's got the rundown of that. As we continue, we'll get to that and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
You have heard the name Howard Cosell, of course. He has a nephew, Greg Cosell, who has spent his career working with NFL Films and probably knows as much about breaking down tape of players as anyone. He has had a lot of success doing various shows on ESPN and has spent a lot of time in the film room with people who have trained eyes. Now, Greg didn't play in the NFL, but he knows how to evaluate tape. And he's looked at the quarterback prospects, and he talked to Rich Eisen yesterday. We'll play some of what he said coming up in the next hour, but hint, hint, he's not that high on J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy's due for a visit at Ashburn this week, and there's talk that, he's Adam Peters' type of guy, that they're going to take him at 2. Greg doesn't think that's such a good idea. We'll get to that and a whole lot more coming up in the next hour. Meantime, count me among the people who looked at the Shohei Ohtani story in the last few weeks and said, oh, my God, how is it possible that he didn't know what was going on here. The first report was his interpreter lost $4.5 million gambling. Well, that's eye-opening to begin with. Then the details start to spill out. And I remember early on, Dan Patrick had on a gambling expert. He said, look, to lose $4.5 million, you got to be betting a heck of a lot more than that because you're going to win some of the time. And he estimated to lose that kind of money, he had to have bet between $80 and $100 million. Well, as we've come to find out, it was like twice that the interpreter bet like $180 million, and the losses weren't $4.5 million. They were about $40 million, and he stole $16 million from Ohtani. And I kept saying, oh, my God, he's got accountants. He's got people who work for. How does this go unnoticed? There's been FBI investigation of this. Major League Baseball has looked into it, and it looks like Ohtani is off the hook. The big thing is, I think the most important thing is, the interpreter never bet on baseball. And even if the outreach touched Ohtani, even if there was some knowledge of that, the punishment would be limited. Betting, I know you know, is legal, but not in California, and this was with an illegal bookmaker in California. He's going to pay the price, the interpreter. But it looks like Ohtani is free and clear. And this is Jeff Passan, who covers Major League Baseball for ESPN, on with Rich Eisen yesterday, who says, yeah, I looked at the report, and it looks good.
It's a pretty good case that the federal government lays out, that the story that Shohei Ohtani told to the public in his statement, it checks out. And there are just a number of elements in there, whether it's the lack of communication over, thousands upon thousands of pages of text messages between Shohei Ohtani and Ippei Mitsuhara, that refers to gambling. There's nothing in there about that. There are the admissions of Mitsuhara. I am a terrible gambler, he says, like multiple times. And then at the end, the whole technically I did steal money from him. It's not an open and shut case ever, because look, there could be a grand conspiracy in place here, but that conspiracy would involve Shohei Ohtani, Ippei Mitsuhara, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Los Angeles Angels, the federal government, authorities, Ohtani's agent, his accountant, his financial advisor, banks. Like, there's so many different parts of this that in order for you to believe that this was actually Shohei Ohtani and not Ippei Mitsuhara, you have to believe that everyone played his or her role to a T and fooled everyone. Now, we've seen situations in life where that has happened, but the truth is, this may just be Occam's razor, Rich. The simplest thing is Ippei Mitsuhara had a gambling problem and stole money from his friend, confidant, and employer, Shohei Ohtani, and is going to go to jail for it.
Well, and that's the question I have, is the ripple effect, if there is any. Because if let's just say I'm Rob Manfred, and the commissioner of baseball, I'm sure ready to get the green light from the federal government to see that everything is, T crossed and I dotted, to just basically say we're moving on here. There's nothing against Shohei Ohtani, case closed. I would definitely try what you'd call the Players Association to see how we can look into all interpreters to make sure that everybody does have another avenue of communication with his representation. Would you call the representatives? Right. Like, how would you make sure that a bad lieutenant interpreter doesn't sully the game and tarnish any of the major stars international of this sport? How would you do that? Right? Yeah,
I think due diligence and background work is paramount in these sorts of things, especially when you're talking about a forward-facing person like the interpreter. But I think ultimately, like, the lack of communication or poor communication comes back on Ohtani's camp, does it not? Like, if you have a guy who's going to be signing for $700 million, I understand your desire to go and trust the person who's there, who Shohei Ohtani himself trusts, but There sometimes needs to be an additional layer of protection, and that's what was lacking here. That's why when they went and asked him about the bank account in question, Ippei Mitsuhara said, Shohei wants to keep that private. And there was nothing that they could do to go back to Shohei and say, hey, do you really want to keep this private, and why? Like, we're not trying to push too much, but this is something that's important. And a lot of money is going into there. So do you know what's going on with that money? If those conversations had happened, Rich, none of this would be as big as it is. But because those conversations didn't happen, you got to look back on it now if you're anyone around baseball and say, okay, how can we prevent the same sort of thing from happening to us?
Yeah, I guess like that's the moment, right? That because any conversation you do have with Ohtani like that, however, had to have Mitsuhara in the room, and he's the one doing the interpreting, unless Ohtani does understand enough English to get to the gist of the question from very concerned-looking representatives of his that he also trusts. So I guess that's also another question for you, Jeff Passan, is how much English does Ohtani understand, and is he one of those bubble-type guys that would just go rake, go pitch, figure everyone else is just handling everything, and not notice $16 million missing from his direct deposit Artie Moreno account? You know what I mean?
Sure. I'll answer the latter question first because I think that's very pertinent here. Yes, I can 100% see a scenario in which he doesn't check his bank accounts because he's extremely wealthy and money is not of a concern to him, really. He's not the person who's going out and getting all kinds of material things. That's just not his style. If you look in the complaint, the government investigators say Ohtani had not logged into that particular account under his ID in years. So if you want to accuse him of something here, you can accuse him of naivete. You can accuse him of being surrounded or surrounding himself with the wrong people. You can accuse him of not having the sort of financial literacy necessarily that somebody is going to have when they have that much money coming in. But from the evidence, you can't accuse him of gambling because there is no compelling evidence toward that.
You're listening to a conversation. Jeff Passan, baseball insider for ESPN, with Rich Eisen, about the Shohei Ohtani circumstance, which seems to be coming to a conclusion with Ohtani off the hook.
In terms of the first question, this is one of those situations where my second answer went so long I forgot what it was. So you're going to have to remind me of what the first
Does he speak English?
I was filibustering so hard there. I was trying.
I'm sorry. No. Does he understand enough English to potentially, if there was that moment where agent, bookkeeper, financial advisor, CPA, all in the room, all in Nez Balelo's office, looking right at Ohtani with Mitsuhara sitting there as his interpreter. And they basically say, there's some account that Ippei tells us you don't want us to have eyes on, and we're really concerned about that. Would he understand that to the point where Mitsuhara could basically say, they just want to know, how's your dog? And he would just go, oh, yeah, everything's okay, right? Like, so that's the question I was asking at first.
Yes. Let me give you two examples here. Example number one, I don't know if you saw Sunday Night Baseball last night, but Shohei Ohtani was standing there talking about his shoes and talking in really good, if not perfect English. The second one at the World Baseball Classic last year, after, that final at bat against Mike Trout, that incredible strikeout that he had on one of the nastiest sweepers I've ever seen. He was walking toward the press conference room, and I sort of sidled up next to him in the hallway. And as a reporter, you try and get like these, walk and talks. You sometimes get some of your best stuff there, especially when the clubhouse wasn't open at that event. And we just had a perfectly nice conversation about not just how cool that was, but how that's going to be a pitch in an at bat that's remembered for a long time. To say that Shohei Ohtani is fluent like you or I don't think that's true. To say that he understands English well enough to both hold a conversation and be able to get what's going on in a scenario like the one you presented, yes. He gets English well enough there. And I think the way that we know that is from the story that is being told right now. Ohtani realized something was a little bit off from Ippei Mitsuhara addressing the Los Angeles Dodgers clubhouse when they were in Korea. That's how the alarm went off in his head. Now, has he really been shielded this entire time from everything that's been going on? If the answer is yes, then that's a dereliction of duty from the people who are there to protect him. And if the answer is no, then there are lies going on. Either way, it's not great and not a great look for the people involved.
That's Jeff Passan, ESPN baseball insider. The big takeaway for me is you have to have oversight. As much as Ohtani trusted Ippei Mitsuhara, he let him have too much latitude here. And he liked him, obviously, and was friends with him. And he did, I'm sure, a good job as an interpreter, or he wouldn't have kept him around for that. But behind the scenes, he was stealing his money. And he had a terrible gambling problem. And Mitsuhara, by being able to do this without any oversight, kept going and going and going, and it got really out of hand where he's making 25 bets a day, some of them like $150,000. And man, when you see the amount of money, the traffic back and forth, it's incredible that it went unnoticed. But as Jeff Passan said, they looked at the account and saw that Ohtani hadn't logged into it in years. So, I've been talking about the great job, it seems, that Josh Harris has been doing as owner of the Commanders, hiring good people. But he hires, I'm sure, good people and then spends his time making sure they're doing their jobs correctly. He lets them do their job, as Ohtani did with Mitsuhara, but obviously didn't have oversight as to what he was doing. And then when it was found out, it was like, whoa, this is all under my nose? All of this is going on? It's almost like Breaking Bad, where you had, if you saw the show, that Walter White is selling all this meth, and his brother-in-law's with the DEA, and it takes you to the end of season 6, where the brother-in-law goes to take a crap and picks up a book in the bathroom and finally discovers what's been going on and the millions and millions of dollars, and it was the trusted brother-in-law, the beloved brother-in-law. They used to have cookouts together and hung out together. And it was all happening under his nose. This is not exactly the same thing, but it was illegal activity, given that the bookie is an illegal bookmaker in California. And when he finally finds out, well, he's playing a game in Korea, it's like, whoa, really? And when you first look at it on the surface, it's a $4.5 million gambling loss. But then as you peel away the layers, it's, oh, my God, it's $180 million. And $40 million lost, and it went on for 2 years with incredible amounts of bets made. But, again, the FBI investigated, baseball investigated, and Ohtani was a victim of his own negligence there, but did not do anything illegal and will not face, looks like, any discipline for Major League Baseball, and he's got to find a new interpreter who he's going to keep an eye on. I think you could be pretty confident of that. Coming up, Mike Tirico with some post-Masters thoughts, including the new Tiger, and some very eloquent stuff from Mike Wilbon on that as well. We'll talk also about the Commanders draft as the top quarterbacks are in for visits this week, and a whole lot more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, a little bit on this, and this was Mike Tirico yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show, and we talked about this, that Scotty Scheffler is now the face of golf, but he's a reluctant face, it seems. Family guy, doesn't really do endorsements. I don't think generally people would know who he is. Everybody knew who Tiger Woods was after he won his first Masters in 1997. He was all over the place. And remember the commercial that he did for Nike, Hello World? We don't have any of that with Scotty Scheffler. But he's a great player. And he's won 2 Masters at the age of 27. And Dan Patrick was doing this on his show yesterday, like, where is he now? Because we always do these athlete comps. And there have been great players who haven't really enjoyed the limelight very much, and Scheffler seems to be one of them. So this was Patrick talking to Mike Tirico, who's done golf, of course, for many years on ESPN and now NBC, ABC before that, and did the Masters for Sirius XM Radio as to where we put Scotty Scheffler.
You know, Scotty's 27, and there's nothing dynamic about him. You could say he's the golf equivalent to John Stockton. He just kind of shows up, does his job, doesn't care about really anything else, cares about his faith and his family. But are we ready to fast track, Scotty?
Yeah. Two Masters in 3 years. So the one thing you're going to want to see is Scotty win outside of this stretch of the year. All of his wins have come from January to April. Now we're really nitpicking, right? But that would be the next step. Win a U.S. Open. He can contend in all of these tournaments. He can contend in Louisville at the PGA, being played at Valhalla the week after the Derby. So he's got all of that. I did the radio broadcast on Sirius XM and worked with Taylor Zarzour, who's a terrific guy and does a great job covering golf for them and does college football and other stuff. I thought Taylor brought up a good one. Pete Sampras or NASCAR Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
I thought those were really good. Like, defined excellence. In many ways, when you look at the record, stretches of dominance, but very low key. This is who I am. I'm not going to go seek every endorsement under the sun. Success will not change me. I'm just going to be this guy. Scotty's fun. Scotty's a nice guy to be around. Great humor, a great family, obviously deep in faith. But he's not going to be seeking the wow stuff that you get even with a Bryson DeChambeau. So I thought all those, Stockton for you as well, those are really apt and good comparisons. That doesn't mean he's not great. It just means he's not Madison Avenue $1 million every time he turns around, and that's fine.
That's fine, but maybe not perfectly fine for golf, which is really in an odd period now with the Live Tour and fans trying to figure out who they're going to see when they watch tournaments outside of the majors. And Tiger Woods was great for golf. Those guys make a hell of a lot more money now because of what Tiger did. Scotty Scheffler, if he's the dominant player on the tour, I'm not so sure he's going to draw a lot of eyeballs to the set and get a lot of people turned on to golf. And we'll get to what Mike Wilbon said about the Tiger effect for him. But this is more from Tirico on Tiger, speaking of him, who did make the cut, set the record by making 24 straight cuts at Augusta. Nobody had done that before. But the new Tiger is two-round Tiger, because if he gets to the weekend, he just physically can't do it anymore. And he blew up on Sunday and finished dead last. He finished among those who made the cut, finished dead last at the Masters. And this is Tirico with analysis of the Tiger that we have now, the new Tiger Woods.
He's going to be impacted by his injuries for the rest of his career. He's got fused back and a fused ankle, right? It's kind of limiting in the world of golf. I think it's remarkable at 48, when he doesn't need another dollar to do this, he continues to want to try to compete as much as possible. I think Friday having to play 23 holes because we didn't get done on Thursday probably set him back. It was an early turnaround. It takes hours for him just to be ready to go play because of all he has to do is get his body to that point. But it's the first time in a regular event he's completed 72 holes in over a year. So I think that's a box to check and a positive. Says he wants to play in the other majors. We'll see if he does. But the fact that he's even talking about being able to do it is good. The two things I saw yesterday that were, to me, the coolest, because Augusta, as you know, you've been here so many times, it gives you like great feels, and it's really cool stuff. One was Tiger, who's known for being laser focused, stopping at 16 to walk over and say hi to Vern Lundquist when Vern was watching from down behind a tree there. It's just the ultimate sign of respect. I thought it was so cool that Tiger did that. And seeing Tiger's kid out in the tournament practice area with him, like holding a wedge, holding the shaft of a driver to have your hands fly under it. It's a drill that guys do often. It was just really cool to see because we both have been here, Dan, seeing Tiger's dad with Tiger. And now we're seeing Tiger with his son. And Charlie's like talking swing stuff with him. It's just, for one of the biggest athletes we'll see come across in our lifetime, to see this evolution and generational pass along, it was so cool. I'll take that with me for a long time.
Do you think Tiger's afraid of retirement?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, what do they tell everybody? Do it until they tell you can't anymore, or you can't anymore if you really love it. And he is obsessed with the sport. So afraid of it in some ways, but I think as long as he can get himself out there and do it, look, Jack did.
Yeah, but what do you do when you retire from golf? Do you play golf?
You play golf. You talk about golf. You design golf courses, right?
Yeah.
You put out a line of golf clothes and shoes. And Jack's still out here talking golf and being a part of it. He visited with us this week. Tom Watson is. Gary Player is running around telling people, you need to do more sit-ups. You need to get in better shape. And he's in his late 80s, and he's like hitting tee shots and throwing that leg up in the air with that kick. So, yeah, it's a forever sport, and I think the association with it fuels and drives a lot of these guys. Other guys have other hobbies. I don't think Tiger has as many other hobbies as these guys do, like fishing or other stuff like that.
Well, the thing about Tiger continuing to play golf, and that's Mike Tirico there, he was asked about being a ceremonial starter. Like Jack Nicklaus said he would never do that when he was about that stage of the game, late 40s, early 50s. I don't want to play ceremonial golf. Now he does tee shots, and he knows he can't compete anymore. Tiger, after he made the cut, and it was everything he had in him to do it, was asked about, accomplishing that. And he said, now I'm going to try and win. Well, it wasn't realistic that he was going to win. And he was terrible on Saturday because he had exhausted his body trying to get through to make the cut. And then he had an early tee time on Saturday, and it takes hours and hours to get his body ready. So it's just not realistic anymore. And this was Mike Wilbon yesterday. He talked about it on Tony's show here and then on PTI, coming to the realization that it's now over for Tiger Woods.
For me this weekend, I gave up the Tiger watch. I let go of the rope. And this is important for me. It's kind of emotional because Tiger Woods didn't just change what I do professionally. He changed my life. And I mean in a very specific way. I became golf obsessed. Golf wasn't on the menu for me and people who looked like me, mostly on the south side of Chicago or a lot of places. And I'm thinking about the guys on my text group, and you know all of them. They are black men mostly, in their 60s now we are. And Tiger Woods made us obsessively follow, play, pursue, change our lives as it regarded golf. It changed where we lived. It changed our vacations. It changes our friends. It changes our sporting passions. And for me, this is like the end of Ali. And when Ali fought Trevor Burbick, and you got to go, okay, I got to let this go now. When Jordan put the Wizards uniform on, I said, okay, I got to let this go now. I do mean, I'm talking about that level. It's okay. Tiger gave us everything for a long time. I wish he had better judgment in certain parts because I think he could have won 5 more majors. But nonetheless, Tiger Woods changed the way a lot of us view sports entirely. I'm one of them, I know. And so this weekend, Tom, when he was blowing up and I watched it all, I just said, okay, that's it. I'm done now. Tiger gave us everything, and it's time to move on. And I hope that nobody's going to be Tiger. No one in my lifetime is going to be Tiger. It's like no one in my lifetime, sorry, LeBron, is going to be Jordan. No one in my lifetime, sorry, Mike Tyson, is going to be Ali. No one. That's it. Right. And so, that sort of moved me.
Yeah, and me too. Mike and I are the same age. We grew up in different parts of the country. But our reference on athletes is similar. And I viewed Tiger kind of like I viewed Ali, like invincible. I remember when he lost to Joe Frazier when I was 12 years old, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe that. Couldn't believe it happened because he looked invincible. And Tiger the same way for many years, like when he would lose a major. Like how did that happen? Because he's just so dominant. Michael Jordan, we never really saw him lose because every time he made the finals, he won. Now, we did see Michael Jordan here at the end of his career, which is kind of where we're seeing Tiger right now. And I remember Muhammad Ali fighting Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes, his former sparring partner, breaking down in tears after the fight. Ali went the distance, but he couldn't defend himself anymore. And we're kind of seeing that with Tiger right now. So, I kind of like to see him stick with that idea that if he doesn't think he can compete anymore, stopping. But in his mind, he can still compete. And he did make the cut and beat a lot of really top-line players who are in the prime of their careers. So you can't really say he can't compete. He's allowed to compete for sure. And if he wants to finish dead last, that's okay too. I don't think you hold that against him. But it's just that it's a jarring thing. Like same Joe Montana never lost a Super Bowl. We never saw him do that. You know, those type of athletes. Tom Brady, yeah, we saw him lose, but we saw him win more than anybody else. He won 7 of them. 7 of them. And Tiger is in that group, and to see that period passing, and Mike's right, at least in golf, we'll never see anybody like him again. And in the other sports, will we see somebody as dominant as he is? Maybe, maybe not. But you can say LeBron is, but LeBron has, I think, lost more finals than he's won, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a different kind of thing. But to see the end of Tiger Woods, I'm with Mike on that. It's kind of jarring, and the effect that he had, even though I don't play golf, he got me watching golf like a lot of other people in this world, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. All right, coming up, Greg Cosell looked at the tape of the quarterbacks, what the Commanders should do at 2. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, Tony's coming up at 11. Actually, Mike Callow in for Tony today. Round and round we go on this quarterback decision here. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Drake May? Is it going to be Jaden Daniels, or the long shot J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, which just won the national championship? Reports are that Daniels was in Ashburn yesterday. They expect to finish up with him today. Drake May is supposed to have dinner with the team tonight, team officials, not the team officials. And then tomorrow they're supposed to wrap it up with J.J. McCarthy. According to Albert Breer, all these in-person interviews have to be wrapped up today. With McCarthy being the long shot, the debate has been, and you hear experts both sides. One says, oh, yeah, Drake May, he's their guy. Another will say, oh, no. And you've even had some who say Drake May's not a first-round player. Okay. And others, it seems to be, the overwhelming opinion seems to be that it's going to be Jaden Daniels. But, we still got over a week and more speculation and more doubt and more questions and more lying about what's going on. Greg Cosell looks at it from an analytical standpoint, looks at it just from watching the film. He sees what he sees, and he tells you what he thinks. And Cosell has worked many years for NFL Films and was on yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show answering the question as to what the Commanders should do at 2. Is it Drake May or is it Jaden Daniels?
Drake May's played in that system because 2 years ago in North Carolina, Phil Longo, who runs an air raid system, who was the North Carolina offensive coordinator 2 years ago, when many believed that Drake May had a better season than he did this past year, he's been in that system. So he understands it. He knows the methodology. He knows how it's taught. He knows the concepts. So he would probably not have a problem really stepping right in and understanding at least what he's asked to do. That doesn't mean you execute it at a high level. Sure. It's obviously a different level of football. I would think Jaden Daniels could execute that system effectively. Certainly there's a run element that Jaden Daniels gives you, although he's not just a runner. Some might think he is because he's so dynamic, but he stays in the pocket. The running is his parachute. It's the last thing he looks to do. But I think that both those guys in an ideal world would fit. I think both of them will have some learning to do because the game will be different. The game will be faster. And that's the thing, you never know exactly how long the learning curve takes. The one thing about the air raid offense is these guys aren't really taught much about defenses. And one advantage Drake May had this past season in North Carolina is Clyde Christensen was there essentially coaching him. And as you know, Clyde Christensen coached in the NFL for a long time. Mm-hmm. He coached Andrew Luck. He coached Tom Brady. He coached Peyton Manning. So I guarantee Drake May, and he's got some issues he has to work out as well, by the way, but Drake May probably has a better understanding of the process of how to go about playing the position. Because it all starts, Rich, with the process.
Yeah, and then the consensus that I've heard, too, from a lot of evaluators, Greg, is that May needs maybe more time to sit if you have the luxury and can afford that sort of thing. I don't know if you already gave me the sort of head nod in a way that thinks that's not a certainty. But my question for you then is, which one do you think that you've seen out of all the quarterbacks available is most pro-ready, that can step in based on the processing, based on the knowledge, based on what you've seen on tape, Greg?
Well, I'll answer it this way.
Sure.
I think that no one is theoretically pro-ready because the environment and the game is different. So I think when you talk to coaches, which I do a lot of at the Combine, as you know, I get to see you there on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things they always talk about is you sort of have to tailor what you do to what their strengths are, especially if they have to play early. So it's not so much being pro-ready, it's taking what you believe they do really, really well and tailoring some of what you do offensively with your pass game to what they do so they're comfortable, because they've got to play and you want them to have some success. Now, do some quarterbacks come in and have great success? Yes, look at what C.J. Stroud did, and now everybody thinks that, hey, every quarterback who's drafted high is going to come in and be C.J. Stroud. It's like when coaches go from worst to first, every owner thinks that that's going to happen all the time. So you have to be a little careful with that, but you tailor what you think they do best. So in other words, if a quarterback is mobile, you'd like to be in a situation where the quarterback run game is a factor, where the quarterback boot action pass game is a factor. You try to give him things that he's comfortable with and that help him see things clearly. The key thing is for the quarterback to see things clearly in a very short amount of time, Rich.
So which one do you think has that skill set?
Who?
Yeah.
That's a hard question. I mean,
well, I only asked those, Greg.
Now it comes down to how you structure your offense. I mean, you could look at someone like Bo Nix, who's not going to be drafted in the top 5, but Bo Nix played in a system that really defined things beautifully for him. He was a brilliant executor and ball distributor. I would bet that there are some coaches that look at Bo Nix and think that, hey, I have a system that is really effective. He can execute it at a pretty high level right now. He's not as gifted a passer as some of the other guys. He doesn't have as big an arm. He's not a power thrower. You don't have to be a power thrower. Joe Burrow is certainly not a power thrower. And I hope people understand I'm not making a direct comparison between Bo Nix and Joe Burrow. But, arm strength is a relative term. Some people it's really important. Some people it's not. Think of it this way, Rich. If you talk to 15 different coordinators or quarterback coaches, they'll probably have the same 15 traits on their list of what's important, but it's the value they ascribe to specific traits. Some might ascribe higher value to a specific trait, others not so much. It all depends on what value you ascribe based on how you see the game as a coach.
So the key question, who's it going to be? Is it going to be May or Daniels? You don't really get an answer there from Cosell, but you get an analysis after looking at the two players. And I think the one takeaway for me is that May knows the system. He played in this system as a freshman and actually had probably a better year as a freshman than he did as a sophomore. So that might lean you in the direction of May if you're thinking that they're not necessarily going to take Jaden Daniels. As for J.J. McCarthy, who's also due to visit Ashburn this week, Cosell is more definitive about him.
I don't think the tape spoke to being a first-round pick. I think that the system he played in, I'm sure it was pro-based in terms of terminology and methodology. You like to see things on tape that you feel you can extrapolate to the next level. You did not see a lot of that with J.J. McCarthy, which, again, doesn't mean he can't do it, Rich. Mm-hmm. It just means that you'd like to see it and you didn't. So now you look at him and obviously he's going to, every quarterback goes out on a pro day and throws the ball nicely. I mean, it's shorts and a T-shirt. So I don't think he showed a particularly good arm on tape at Michigan. He played behind the best offensive line in college football. Receivers were open. It was relatively easy for him. I'm not necessarily a believer that he wasn't asked to do a lot because that's not on him. But it does matter when you think that, how do we evaluate a lot of these quarterbacks, Rich? If you're losing 27-17 in the fourth quarter and there's 8 minutes to go and you have to drop back and pass literally every play, do we know if J.J. McCarthy can do that? Maybe he can. I'm sure you'd say we don't really know the answer to that based on what he did in college.
Well, in terms of your evaluation there, let's say a bunch of folks in the top, say 10 or 11, agree with you that the tape doesn't say first round. Does he fit what Sean Payton does, Greg?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, look, I think McCarthy, at his core, and everybody is a system quarterback because that's the way it's taught.
Sure.
But that seems to have a negative, pejorative connotation, obviously, as you know. But everybody is taught that way. I think ultimately with J.J. McCarthy, you want him in a system where the run game is a factor, where personnel and formations really factor into the equation, where play action factors in. One thing he has done is he's turned his back to the defense with play action, and that's a learned trait. If you've never done that before, that's a little scary for a quarterback, because when you turn your back to the defense and then turn your head back around, they're not in the same spot they were before you turned your head. So that's a learned trait, and he knows how to do that. That's something he has done. But I think that the complementary nature of the way in which he played at Michigan is the way you'd like him to sort of get his feet wet in the league to start.
So, takeaway from Cosell, hard to say whether it's going to be May or Daniels. Each of them does different things. Depends on how much the organization values what one does over the other. But he does say that the tape tells him that J.J. McCarthy is not a first-round pick. We'll find out for sure a week from Thursday night. Meantime, I would urge you to read a pretty long piece that was at SI.com. And by the way, it looks like SI is going to survive. They were on the deathbed. People were writing obituaries for Sports Illustrated a month and a half ago. And now it looks like they're back, and the people who continue to work for them do great work, like Pat Forty and Albert Breer, are going to continue to do what they do. So he did a long piece on Dan Quinn, and it's about the 360 thing that he used. I don't know what the 360 system is, might be the way you put it, but it talks about how he got together with the players for the first time. They got a 2-week jump on other teams because he's a new coach, so they started their workouts right at the beginning of this month, and he told the players to put together a PowerPoint presentation to, quote, show your why. That's an RG3 thing that he used to throw around. Know your why. He wants everybody to know one another personally. That's a big part of what he does. And he says the better you know somebody, the harder and deeper that coaching can go. And they say if you know the person, you coach him differently. Like Jimmy Johnson was famous for coaching 53 players 53 different ways. He's a psychology major. Sounds like Quinn's got some of that in him as well. He calls it connection and competition. And you may have heard this before. When he was fired by Atlanta, October 11th of 2020, he had heard about something called a 360 review, which they'd used at the executive level of Home Depot. Arthur Blank, the former chairman of Home Depot, that's where he made all his money, he had found out about that. So he wanted to find someone to review performance and talk to former players and coaches. And he said, quote, if there were blind spots, I wanted to know them so I could work on them. And I would not have expected this, but Laura Oakman, who's a sideline reporter, does this kind of work. And she had done it for another coach who had been fired. They don't list his name. But she asked for a list of 30 to 40 people and said, some of them you may know are fully behind you and some of them may be against you, but you're not going to know who says what. We'll just tell you what was said. And he was okay with that. And she did an extensive report on that. And he came away with two key things that he had not been doing well: managing his time and delegating. So that was he knew if he got another shot, he was going to have to improve on that. Manage time better and delegate more effectively. And she actually said to him, one of the people, I guess he talked to both assistant coaches and players, said one who thought that he said would be tough, said to Laura Oakman about Dan Quinn, you tell him this, don't change an effing thing that you do. You are who you are. And, talks about his day now. He's putting in long days in Ashburn, starts at 5:30 in the morning, doesn't leave till like 9 o'clock at night. The players are in from 9 to 1. And Oakman says Dan has learned from all of his mistakes and went out and worked on them. So, I think that's a good thing. I think that's because a lot of times, and it happened here all the time. You got fired and you said, well, Dan Snyder's a schmuck, and that's why it ended. I don't think. Let's put it this way. I don't think that Mike Shanahan, with 2 Super Bowl championships, walked out of here after getting fired following the 2013 season and said, oh, yeah, there's going to be some things I need to improve on if I get another shot. Now, he was older. He was already – Quinn, I think, is like 52 now, 53. Shanahan was in his 60s, and he had done it, and there wasn't any reason. But Quinn, I think he felt like he worked for good ownership in Arthur Blank, thought he had an opportunity. Look, he came within a whisker. He was 28-3 up on the Patriots, almost winning a Super Bowl. How life would have changed dramatically. If he wins that game, he might still be there, and here he is now off that learning experience, what he did wrong. He wound up staying another couple of years, it wasn't even 2 full seasons, right? No, it's the 2017 season. No, 2016 season. Yeah, I guess it was. It was the 2016 season. So he stayed a few more years in Atlanta, but that's how he looks to improve on what he did. He did this, what they call 360, and not a bad idea for anybody who fails at a job, that you have an opportunity to find out what you did wrong for your next opportunity. Having been laid off or fired 4 times might have been something I'd thought of, but whenever this ends, I won't be looking for another job. Caps, enormous game tonight. Need to win to get in the playoffs. If they get it done against Philadelphia, they're in. If they lose, it's most likely over, but there would be a slight possibility if they lose in overtime that Pittsburgh could lose tomorrow night and get in, but you don't want to leave it up to that. And all kudos to them for putting it together. They looked at the trade deadline like it was over, and it's not. They're still alive. I'm sure Mike Callow will have a lot more to say about that as he sits in for Tony next, and I will be back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.